This is the National Broadcasting Company.
Hey everyone, I'm Simone. Tonight on Signal, 5G is around the corner, but will this hyper-fast tech make the web more equal? And the holidays are here, but there's a good chance you're not actually shopping in stores. How the shift to online shopping has totally changed the season. And Apple is expanding, adding thousands to its workforce around the country and opening a new billion-dollar campus. But first, we're looking to the final frontier. Virgin Galactic successfully launched Spaceship Two today. It's their passenger space plane, also known as the VSS Unity. So back in 2014, a Virgin test pilot was killed when the Unity's sister ship crashed. Today, they sent 2 astronauts more than 50 miles above the Earth's surface, technically crossing the threshold to the beginnings of space. The launch was a giant leap. I had to. Closer to Virgin's goal of sending tourists to outer space. So Richard Branson watched the launch from the ground and spoke to NBC about it.
So it's a wonderful day and a very historic day, and a day that, there hasn't been a spaceship that's gone into space from American soil for about 10 years. And it's the first commercial spaceship company to put people into space. So we're on cloud 9. You know, it may not be everybody's taste, but there is a lot of people out there that would love that experience.
The leaders of both England and France are safe after surviving no confidence votes in both of their countries. For French President Emmanuel Macron, this came after weeks of protests from that Yellow Jackets movement. And for UK Prime Minister Theresa May, it's after months of Brexit plans stalling and losing some support within her own party. So what's next? Our friends over at Euronews are tracking everything from the Cube.
Feels like we've been talking about Brexit for a lifetime, but it was only in 2016, just 2 years ago, that the UK had a vote. People there voted 52% to head for the exit door of the European Union. And so Brexit, we first used that word Brexit, it came into use. Now, what did that mean? Well, this meant the UK was divorcing not just one country, but 27 European countries. Imagine how complicated a divorce that was. And the UK Prime Minister, Theresa May, she was the one whose job it was to come up with a divorce agreement. But she was stuck, and still is, between a rock, the European Union, 27 countries here, and a hard place here, because she needs the support of politicians in the UK to agree her deal. And they hate it. It's fair to say many people hate it. Even her allies hate it. This week, in her own party, they tried to kick her out of the job to get rid of her. She clung on, but is now trying a desperate attempt to delay a vote so she can get this deal agreed in January. Now, why does all this matter? Well, while all this is going on, this political theatre, there are real issues that aren't getting addressed in the UK. And it's still not clear whether there'll be a Brexit divorce agreement by the deadline of March. And people found this week, well, they sort of thought it was a big waste of time. Let's just bring up some of the tweets. Well, look at this GIF. This sums it up. Waste of my time. That's how somebody summed up Theresa May's desperate attempt to stay in her job. Other people here, my thoughts exactly. Just another temporary distraction from the Brexit shambles. People are feeling that all this political infighting is distracting from the big issues. And the thing is, the political theatre, well, it's certainly not over yet. Theresa May, she survived, but still hasn't got an agreement for her divorce deal.
So 5G, it's the tech that could eventually replace 4G. The promise is that it'll be much faster and more powerful. It could be used to power smart cities, but it may not be deployed evenly. Signal's Dasha Burns flew to Minnesota to look at how this innovation, designed to connect the world, could impact the folks who can barely check email now.
Over here, information is coming out of my yield monitor into my iPad.
This is Pete Kramer, and this is his farm. He's a crop consultant in rural Minnesota, meaning he collects data from his farm and sends it to clients.
Just about every piece of equipment has a computer hooked to it.
Thing is, the internet is kind of new around here. Okay, not literally, but 2 years ago, he could barely send an email.
I'd have to a lot of times wait until midnight to send those data packages because my upload speed would be so slow. It meant me running USB sticks. Sometimes I'd drive up to 60 miles to drop off some information or some data for the farmer.
So that's like the horse and buggy days, like Paul Revere with a flash drive. I know his story sounds extreme, but a third of U.S. homes don't have high-speed internet. America's digital divide is real, and it could actually get worse. Have you thought about what might happen as 5G gets deployed?
I'm skeptical of how long it would take. There's areas that are going to be left behind for a while yet.
It got me thinking. 5G is promising to connect our world faster than ever before. But could it end up dividing us further?
5G is the future.
Ultra high speeds, ultra reliability.
That will not only allow for phones to be connected, but almost everything.
A quick breakdown. 5G is the wireless network that will ultimately take over 4G. It'll power phones, and it might also replace your home internet. Yeah, it's that fast. Here's where it gets complicated. 4G relies on cell towers that service many miles. Then 5G uses devices called small cells. Their range is only several hundred feet. So for 5G to work in a rural area, you're looking at a lot of small cells that cost a lot of money. But the digital divide isn't just a rural problem. Over the course of, your 4 years in high school, I'm sure you've been assigned a lot of homework. A lot of that homework relies on an internet connection.
It's frustrating because you want to do the homework, but you can't do it because you don't have no internet.
I met up with Eric. He's a high school senior from Newark, New Jersey. It's across the river from Manhattan. Yet over 40% of homes here don't have high-speed internet.
Colleges emailing me back about deadlines, and I can't even get to it.
Are you worried about missing out on opportunities because of that?
Yes, because financially, I'm not where I should be yet.
In rural areas, the digital divide is about access. In urban areas, it's about cost. In both cases, it makes things pretty difficult. That's why Eric takes the bus here after school. It's a learning center at Rutgers University, just so he can get online. Would a cell phone be enough to do everything you need to do?
No, I say you need a phone and a computer. With a phone, you got a keyboard, so now...
Just doing this
you like all day long.
You can't write a college essay doing that. Nearly 1 in 5 teens can't finish schoolwork because they lack internet or a computer. It's called the homework gap, and it's especially a problem in low-income homes. Which brings us back to 5G. If families can't afford basic internet now, will 5G be any different? And what happens to those who just can't wait for 5G to deliver on its promises? Well, it kind of goes back to Pete and his farm, and why he finally has high-speed internet. What are we looking at here?
Every single blinky light is a customer.
These are humans using your service.
Currently, we have over 2,000 subscribers, and we have room for way more.
This is RS Fiber, a Minnesota-based co-op. The communities around here felt left behind by the big internet providers. So people decided to, make their own internet.
It's not a company coming in and doing it. It's all the towns working together to bring the service in that their constituents want.
As 5G becomes a reality, is that a factor for you guys at all?
You can't see what 5G can do until it's deployed. In the rural areas, up till a couple years ago, they didn't have 4G. Metro areas had 4G. So if 5G is available tomorrow in Minneapolis, how long before it's available everywhere?
It's a pretty classic tale. If you're a big telecom company, you go first where the big profit is. And that's usually not rural or low-income areas. But RS Fiber is helping bridge the divide here, and it isn't some anomaly. There's a growing movement of communities taking the internet into their own hands. How did RS Fiber change your whole operation?
It gave me the flexibility to do my emails in the morning, any time of the day.
It's like it's 2018.
Right. I feel like I've joined the rest of civilization.
5G could take us into the future. It has the potential to power smart cities, driverless cars, even robotic surgery. Still, we're years away from seeing if everyone can access it equally. So maybe we should be asking a different question. Should internet be a public utility the same way that gas and electricity is?
If you didn't have internet at home, it'd be the same way if you didn't have water at home or power at home. Could you really operate?
He's kind of right. The internet isn't exactly a luxury anymore. I mean, you're watching this online right now. How long could you last without it?
All right, here are some of today's headlines briefly. NBC has learned that the president has confided in friends that he's worried about impeachment. Earlier today on Fox News, he responded to allegations that he instructed his personal attorney, Michael Cohen, to bury some embarrassing stories ahead of the 2016 elections. Here's what he said.
They put that on to embarrass me.
They put those 2 charges on to embarrass me. They're not criminal charges. What happened is either Cohn or the prosecutors, in order to embarrass me, said, listen, I'm making this deal for reduced time and everything else. Do me a favor, put these 2 charges on.
So here's where the plot thickens. The publisher of the National Enquirer, American Media Inc., or AMI, admitted that it worked with Trump's campaign to buy silence from 2 women, Stormy Daniels and Playboy model Karen McDougal, for $150,000. Now, the concept is known as catch and kill. That's when a publisher buys a story knowing they'll never publish it. The hush money was funneled to AMI through Cohen, who was sentenced to 3 years in prison starting in March. Okay, now on to Turkey, and I want to warn you, some of these images are pretty shocking. At least 9 people are dead and dozens are injured after a high-speed train crashed in Ankara, Turkey. The train was traveling from the Turkish capital when it hit a maintenance engine, then slammed into a pedestrian overpass. Turkey's president said that the crash will be investigated. And now switching gears over to Apple, they're going to build a 133-acre campus in Austin, a mile from Apple's existing location in the city. The new space will cost over $1 billion and create 5,000 jobs. Apple CEO Tim Cook said that he is, quote, proud to bring new investment, jobs, and opportunities to the area and to expand its quarter-century partnership with the city. Now, Apple's also going to build new sites in Seattle, San Diego, and Culver City. Okay, here's a milestone for you. 15 years ago today, Saddam Hussein, the strongman president of Iraq, was captured by American forces. Now, back then, the headlines read the former dictator was caught like a rat in a hole. Now, 15 years later, American forces are still fighting in Iraq. And those are your headlines, briefly. We'll be right back in 30 seconds.
This grave constitutional crisis thing.
The people in the room, they gasped. It then became clear what this was about. That's really, to use a legal expression, that's when the hit the fan.
This is a story that is not well known.
What stuck in my mind about it was this was in the White House.
And the fact of the matter was, he was a crook.
Oh my God. But it really should be, especially maybe now.
Rachel Maddow and MSNBC present Bagman. Binge all 7 episodes now.
All right, I know it feels like just yesterday we were wrapping up the midterm elections, but guess what, guys? Candidates are already gearing up for the 2020 presidential race. So we're bringing in Steve Koronacki to break down which Democrats think they have a shot at taking the White House.
All right, thanks, Simone. Yeah, so look, 692 days from now, the 2020 presidential election, that seems like an eternity from now. But by the way, it's just over a year from now that the voting is going to begin in the Democratic primaries. And that means it's like right about now is when these candidates, these potential candidates, have to start making up their minds. So take a look at this. This right now, call this the long list. These are the Democrats who, I don't know, maybe, possibly, there's some reason to think these Democrats might end up running for president in 2020. There's 33 here in total. We don't think they're all going to run. In fact, a couple of them, in fairness, have now actually taken their names out of the mix. Deval Patrick, the former governor of Massachusetts, he says he's out. He's not running. How about this space? You know, Michael Avenatti, he floated with it. He got in trouble a couple of weeks ago. He says he's not running now. Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, he says he's got his hands full in New York. He's not running. So already that long list of 33, now it's down to a much more manageable 30. This one looks like a free-for-all to a lot of people, and that's why so many are kind of dipping a toe in the water. We do have, by the way, now that this invisible primary process is starting, you're starting to get polls. The group Move On is an online group, sort of left-of-center group, massive membership. They took a straw poll of their members, and they basically said, hey, who do you want? Who do you want as a Democratic candidate in 2020? Well, interesting results here. First of all, almost a third, 29%, said someone else. I don't know. But I think this got a lot of attention here. First place, it's 15.6%. Beto O'Rourke, congressman from El Paso, been there a couple terms, lost the Senate race in Texas, obviously got a lot of national attention this year. Look at this. All the names that are out there right now, when you look at Move On, he got the most support of any name that's out there right now. So that's one, obviously, to keep an eye on. Joe Biden, the former vice president, he says he's going to be talking to his family over the holidays. Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren. Interesting, too, Elizabeth Warren, 6% in this straw poll. Is that a little bit lower than you might have expected when you see Sherrod Brown, Klobuchar, Mike Bloomberg, Cory Booker? He's making moves. And again, there are all sorts of other names that may yet emerge. And results like this cumulatively will have an effect on winnowing out that field. Here's what we're looking at. We say it's just over a year from now. Right now, this is subject to change, but right now it would be February 3rd, 2020. You'd have your first big contest, the Iowa caucuses. Of course, 8 days later, you'd have New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. Those have become sort of the traditional leadoff four in presidential races. But here's the other development here. The first day when other states can sort of start to join the action. Look at this. California and Texas, two biggies, have moved up their primaries March 3rd, 2020. You'd have these four states, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina, and then boom, you'd have Super Tuesday, and you'd have two of the biggest states on the map there going. So right away, this thing would get a lot bigger very fast. But 2018 quickly passing, 2020 quickly arriving.
Thanks, Steve. Well, the Oscars are looking for a host again. Kevin Hart had the job, then stepped down after the internet dug up his old homophobic tweets. So Hart's Oscar gig is now the latest battleground in the culture wars. And some think this is PC culture gone too far. Others say this is what needs to happen for the world to be a more inclusive place. So who has it right, and where do we go from here? Sylvia Obell from BuzzFeed and comedian Marie Faustin are here to help us figure it all out. Okay, so let's just start here. Were you both satisfied with the outcome here?
I don't think there was a satisfying outcome. I guess because not only an apology was given, but way after the fact. Like, you know, by the end of the day, after we went through having to see him say he didn't want to apologize, that he wasn't going to, and that he would be willing to step down instead of apologizing, and then for him to then step down and apologize. I think I was confused because I was hoping that we could get an apology at the start of the day so that he could host. But then him not apologizing and stepping down were like the worst of both worlds, I feel like.
So do you feel like he should be disqualified from hosting the Oscars because of the things that he said in the past?
I think that if he would have apologized for it, you know, genuinely in the beginning of the day, that there could have been room for him to still host.
Gotcha.
But I do think that doubling down on those, you know, those statements, and at least not maybe being understanding as to why a community would need to hear the apology if it was new information to them, I thought that was kind of a terrible thing to do. And I think after that, I was like, I don't see a way for him to be able to host.
There's no going back, yeah. Marie, where are you at?
I feel like Kevin Hart tweeted these things in 2009, right? Or 10, 11. We were all a little bit dumber 10 years ago, right? And certain things we used to say, like I grew up in a time when everything was gay, right? Like a teacher would give you homework and you'd be like, homework on the weekend? That's gay. Like you can't even say that anymore. You know, so he tweeted these things, and as comics, we're always pushing and testing the boundaries to see how far we can go. And in 2009, when he tweeted that, it was fine.
Right.
Right. And then it wasn't, and he apologized for it. And then this comes up, and because he said that he had apologized already, that's why he didn't want to apologize again. And it's like, so every time you guys want to dig this back up, I got to apologize?
I do think, though, that when you say something offensive, right, I think there's PC culture, but then there's being straight out offensive. Like, I don't think no matter what decade you say the N-word, it's an issue. No matter what decade or year you say the F-word, it's an issue. And if you have to apologize to that group over and over, anytime that they need that apology, I think that's what you do when you've done something offensive.
But here's the gray area a little bit, though, even with the N-word, because and the F-word, too, there are some people in the gay community who still use that F-word that Kevin Hart used in his tweets.
Right.
So I think there might be some confusion. Is it okay for some people to say it and not for other people to say it? And why is that?
Well, I think I think that's within the community, right? Just like in the same way within the black community that people use the N-word, and we can use it with each other, but it's a thing for that community. You know what I mean? I think it applies to the F-word, and I think that it's the same type of situation there.
I can agree with that. I feel like if as comics, we're seeing that we can get away with less and less things, right? And for us, we just want to see, we're trying to make things funny that are happening currently or what things that we see. So if it was okay then we just gonna what's the cutoff?
Well, I think this is what a lot of people are wondering, right? Like if we extrapolate this out and this culture continues, I mean, does that mean that nobody's going to be qualified to do anything? Does that mean that people have to apologize for everything that they've done in the past? Because I guess I'm just wondering, like,
where's the line?
Yeah,
I do feel like there's a big gray area. I think there's a big place in between saying fully offensive slurs and not being able to joke about anything. I think there's a wide gap there with plenty of room to play with.
But then who decides who can play and who can't play and how much we can play?
Well, and just to be clear, you bring up such a good point, Sylvia. Him alluding to violence, I personally don't think that he actually meant he was going to become violent with his son, but that violence exists, and gay people and people in the LGBTQ community actually deal with that violence
very much
on a regular basis. So I can understand why that was extremely problematic. But I'm wondering for you, Marie, like, in this environment, are you scared to go on stage?
No, because I talk about things that directly and specifically affect me. I'm telling my truth. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like, you can't tell me that I can't say what I'm saying because it happened to me. Or I'm telling you what happened to me. I'm also not, like, none of my comedy involves dropping a dollhouse on anybody. So, like, that's not my ministry. But, like,
and I feel like there's plenty of ways to beef. I love comedy, and I love when we, especially, I love watching black comedians joke about experiences in being black and even racism and all these things. And I can admit that if I saw a white comedian making some of those jokes, I would feel differently. Which is why I do think that comics should be able to play. But when you want to cross certain lines, you should keep it within your own community, because I think that's when you have a better understanding of the barometer there. About what's
one question that I want to leave you guys with. Do these public takedowns, and we've seen a lot of these takedowns over the past year or so, do you think that these work to make the world a more inclusive place?
I think they work to make the world a place where less people have to deal with being deal with being oppressed in a way. And I think sometimes we think certain things are just a word, but certain mindsets and casual homophobia, like, it leads to bigger issues, violence, for a lot of people in those communities. And so I do think it's not about always just being offensive, but it's about keeping certain communities safe. And I think that we should be more alert to that correlation and stop making it just about words and words, because words mean things and they have effects.
Marie, you want to wrap us up?
Words definitely mean things, but I mean, I think that for me, first of all, I already scrubbed my Twitter knowing that I was going to be here. I deleted everything older than a year old. So you could look on my Twitter right now. It's probably still some problematic things, but I just think it's making us smarter, but also making us a little bit more fearful of, like, things that we would not have thought about being offensive in the past, right? We have to be a little bit more careful. We got to be a little bit slower. We got to be a little bit, and I don't even know if I can say slower. You know what I mean? Like, we have to be a little bit more careful about what we're saying, but we also have to let people be the creative people that they are, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Marie, Sylvia, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
The digital era has changed the way we watch TV, the way we date, and even the way we eat. Seamless, Grubhub, anyone? Hey. But one of the biggest evolutions today is actually happening in retail. So this holiday season, we decided to explore just how much the internet is changing the way we shop. Holiday shopping used to involve things like mall Santas and big crowds rushing through small doorways. But it's been getting quieter at those stores in the last few years, and there are less and less of them. The economy is strong, and Americans are shopping. 165 million people bought items Thanksgiving weekend. That's 1 million more than analysts even expected. But brick and mortar is seeing less and less of the action. In-store shopping on Black Friday was down about 2%. That's a trend, and it's having impact. Macy's has closed over 120 stores since 2015. Sears filed for bankruptcy in October and will close another 40 stores early next year. Now, Gap may shutter even more locations, too. At the same time, Black Friday hit a record online. Consumers spent over $6 billion that day and another $3.7 billion on Thanksgiving. Amazon didn't release official numbers, but the company said it broke last year's record with customers buying millions more products over the 5-day weekend. But all's not lost for the physical store just yet. On Black Friday, click and collect orders, where people buy online and pick up in store, were up 73%. So perhaps the future of retail isn't in store, and maybe it's not online either. Seems to lie somewhere in between. All right, that's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.